Birmingham City stay top. Cambridge United pick up their first win of the season, and Barnsley leave it late against Blackpool. Welcome to League One Lowdown. Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown review episode from the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Seb Jones, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson to go through the weekend's results in League One. Jamie, how was your weekend and how have you been?
Yeah, no, good actually. It's been a busy one, but no, I've really enjoyed it. I'm sort of ready for a sleep before the weekend, recording this sort of Sunday evening before the start of next week. But yeah, no, can't complain too much. It's been a nice weekend. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah. Saturday, I was able to get contact of the Barnsley game, so the result was very much needed with that one. And then Sunday, a bit of a chill one really. Went out for a nice meal with my family, and then so, been
Right.
a little bit of a chill one, which we need every now and then. But yeah, lots to chat about in there. Been a busy game week. The first sort of half of the episode, we'll be looking back at the fixtures, sort of reviewing different scorers, some of the surprise results. There seems to be a couple of those over the weekend. And the second half, we're more sort of a preview. We've got a full round of midweek action in League One taking place on Tuesday. So we'll sort of preview those select games that we've picked out, as well as just going through the other fixtures that are taking place at that time as well. The first one we'll look at, the first fixture we'll look at is concerning two teams that perhaps are on the opposite spectrum, and that is Wycombe, Peterborough. Wycombe are actually doing better than I think a lot of people thought they might have done. So they're currently sitting third in the table. Peterborough only 15th, and it went bad to worse for Darren Ferguson's side. 3-1 defeat in the end. Does that mean he's in trouble, do you reckon, with that result, Jenny, Dan Ferguson?
I don't know. It was something obviously. Sam sort of staying clear of making sure everyone knows I'm not the Twitter admin. It's Sam who does the Twitter. So any hate mail over the Twitter, that goes to Sam. But it's something he posted on the League One Lowdown Twitter. Was that asking that question you just asked me there? Is Darren Ferguson in trouble? And I think perhaps it's just a little bit premature. I mean, he's missed to Peterborough. They're in a very bad spot at the minute, obviously. But I think it comes down to something that a bit of a broken record talking about it every week. And it seems like when we talk about Peterborough, it's the fact that they had probably just too much of an overall in the summer. Obviously, the way they do their business, and smartly so, in League One in terms of bringing players in, building them up, selling them on for profit, works a treat until you do what they've done this summer and probably get rid of one or two too many all in one go, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably the issue. It's a lot to gel together, probably not got the quality that they had last season or need to be where they were last season. So yeah, probably just a bit of a holding pattern season, a season off, rather than it being a Darren Ferguson issue. And I do hope they stick by them, by Darren Ferguson, because he's done a lot of good for that club. And to turn them around after that, the unbelievable playoff defeat against Sheffield Wednesday a couple of seasons ago, the way he picked that team back up and got them back again, deserves a bit of credit. So hopefully he gets some time. And if he doesn't, I'm sure he'll be back in a couple of years again anyway.
That's it, yeah. He's had quite a few spells at the club, hasn't he, already? So very familiar with how the club runs, very familiar with their, particularly when it comes to their transfer style, sort of bringing in young talent from the lower leagues, developing them and then selling them off and then going again, bringing in more young talent. So certainly perhaps not too many question marks just yet. As for Wycombe, I mentioned the result puts them in third place in the league table. I think we have to give a bit of a shout out to Richard Coney, who got all three goals within 11 minutes. Within 9 minutes, I beg your pardon.
I'm going to say you're doing him a disservice, a 9-minute hat trick.
Two minutes difference. Yeah. My maths is not as strong as it used to be. Within 9 minutes, 3 goals. And for a player that they signed in January from non-league football, joint top goal scorer in the league alongside Poku and Lee Gregory. It's not bad going at all, is it?
Well, exactly that. And I saw quite a good thread on X or Twitter. I feel like I'm talking a lot about Twitter for someone who sort of, at the minute, is a little bit disenfranchised, I guess you'd say. But yeah, there was a lovely thread on there about talking about his journey from where he's come from and his hardships to getting to where he is now. And yeah, he's doing really well. Obviously, joint top score, like you mentioned. And that 9-minute hat trick was quite unbelievable, really. They obviously took the lead, Peterborough, Ricky J. Jones, and a bit of a reversal. You expect them probably to build on a result like they did at Rotherham. They're 3-1 down and they get it back to 3-3, a really good point, well earned in that second half. And if you can't build on that and win the next game, then that's the concern for me. It's no consistency, which is pretty much what I said last week about Peterborough. They've only won back-to-back league games once this season. That consistency being the trouble. Wycombe obviously not having that problem. 8 league games unbeaten for them, and they've only got 1 loss in 11. That coming against Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup. So they're in a really good spot up there in the playoffs and deservedly so. Whereas Peterborough obviously struggling towards the wrong end. No, with no danger obviously of them getting dragged into anything, but they are sort of like mellow in a way in that sort of mid-table.
Yeah, it could look definitely better for Peterborough, as you said, 15th place after 15 points on board from 12 games so far this season for the Posh. So it could look better. It could also look worse for Peterborough, and they have still got a distance away from the relegation places. But
we don't want to go too overboard. But the fact that it's Peterborough, that they should be in and around the playoffs, and that's where they'll want to be. So it is worth sort of investigating, probably too strong a term, but sort of figuring out why they are where they are, and that's what I put it down to in terms of the overhaul in the summer. And they're just lacking consistency, and they've got to be able to put that together. They can score goals, we all know that. They're just not keeping them out their own net, and there's only so long that can go on before it really does become a problem, which is sort of what it has become.
Yeah, so as for Wycombe as well, mentioned they're in third, only 3 points off the automatic places in the current league rankings, which is pretty good going so far. The next game we'll move on to is I don't know about you, Jamie. Pretty surprise result, I think. One that I certainly did not see, and one that we have talked about that this certain thing needs to come sooner rather than later, and that certain thing is a victory for Cambridge United, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were a little bit critical of Gary Monk, and rightfully so, really, after their start. But the one thing we did mention was that... Yeah, exactly that. But the one thing I think we did mention and give ourselves a little bit of credit and try not to sound like we were wrong in the situation was that we did say that he could turn it around, or they just need a spark, and they've got a spark. Like a 2-0 win against Wigan, Kachunga in the 5th minute, and then Sam Tickle an own goal in the 22nd. It shows a bit of fight, a bit of impetus, a couple of early goals. Obviously, you always have a bit of fortune with an own goal, but a goal's a goal, and for Cambridge, any win would have done. And to do it in what looked like a good performance, going off the stats, they were top of everything, barring possession, which hasn't been Wigan's strong suit, but they're not going to care. Cambridge, they've got to win. As I say, any win would have done. And at the 13th attempt, they've lifted themselves off the bottom of the table.
Yeah, and from what I gather as well, similar to what you were saying, it could have been more than 2, really. Kachunga had an effort in the second half as well, but that was straight at Sam Tickle in the Wigan goal, and then Kachunga almost provided for Akadina, but again, not able to make the most of that. So certainly a surprise victory, I think, for Gary Monk's side. I guess the ultimation question, which is a pretty simple one, is could this be a springboard for Cambridge United to progress up the league table?
It has to be, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't come easy. They've got Stevenage in midweek, so obviously we'll sort of touch on that in the second half. So I'm not going to go too in detail on that. But in terms of just the fact that they've got a team who are very difficult to beat. They obviously beat Mansfield 1-0. They're a team that they're hard to score against. They're hard to break down. They're very dogged, very determined. And that's not the team you want when you're trying to springboard and build on a positive result. But they've got a win, and that's the most important thing. They have something to build on. Whether they do or not, I'm not 100% sure. But the fact that there is something they can build from and springboard off of was more than I was probably expecting from them against Wigan, a team who are on their day a really good side and a tough team to break down of their own right. But yeah, it's just a really good result, and that's the main takeaway, really. That it didn't matter how it came, but it's come, and an even bigger positive is it's come in a good performance and a really deserved victory. And yeah, you mentioned that it could have been more, and that's got to be a positive. And they've given themselves a chance of building on it and putting a good run together. And all credit to Gary Monk and his team for that.
Yeah, and the one thing for me as well is sort of the pressure that was on the back sort of for so long, just having 1 point on the board. Before this game, it was just 1 point from 9 played, which is awful. Sort of, it's an awful record to have. But they would have been fighting to get rid of that, to make it more than just a point, from the season played so far. And they managed to get that. They managed to get 3 with a solid display, as you've covered, sort of at home to Wigan. Perhaps a result no one really saw coming, and ultimately that result has seen them climb off the bottom of the table, which I'm sure they'll be very, very relieved about, having been there. I think they've been rooted there since the start.
I mean, it's one of those
season.
as well that suddenly the narrative changes, and it's Burton are the ones that are in trouble, level on points, but they're now the only one left without a win. And it's interesting how it shifts so quickly. One result can sort of turn things on its head a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. As for Wigan, what can we sort of look into? We said that the result wasn't what we expected. I think we probably would have expected a Wigan victory in this one. That's not the case. Is it just sort of a slip up, really?
A slip up,
A slip up, yeah. I slipped up on that term, slip up, yeah. A slip up. Is it just a slip up for Wigan, or is there some bigger questions to be asked?
I think they're just a bit of an up and down team. They're one of those I stick them in. I mean, at the start of the season, I'd have put Exeter in that category. Obviously, we got that one wrong. But a Northampton, a Wycombe, but obviously they've done so well as well. But it's those mid-table teams. Bristol Rovers maybe is probably a good example. That any given week they could win, they could lose, and you won't be too shocked one way or the other. The problem I point towards is the goal scoring. I mean, ignoring the EFL trophy, they beat Peterborough 3-0 and beat Bristol Rovers 4-0. But the 3 games in between that were goalless draws, and then the one after Peterborough was a goalless draw. So 6 league games heading into this one, 4 goalless draws and 2 big wins. So in terms of keeping the ball out of their own net, they're doing superbly up until this game. It's the first goal they've conceded since the 3rd of September. And first league goal they've conceded since August. So that was quite impressive, and it is a bit of a shocking result. But they're struggling to score consistently. They've scored 7 goals, but in just 2 games. So they're very flash in the pan. They either score a dozen or they don't score any, and that would be the concern I think you'd pick out. They've got some obviously good players up top, and Telo Asgard in attacking midfield is obviously the one gets the most attention. I mean, he's a really classy footballer, but they're missing probably a number 9 that can get you consistent goals. I'm not quite sure Hugo's that in League One at the minute. So I think that would be the only concern I would bring out of it, but I try not to read into it too much. They've been on a decent run of form defensively, but yeah, it's that goal scoring that would be the thing I'd query, but obviously that can't get sorted until January.
Yeah, I agree. And the back end of last month coming into the start of this month, in 4 games, 3 of them were 0-0 full-time scores. So you're right in terms of the scoring. It is an issue, really. Obviously, the main thing is to not concede, but you have to score to win games. So although sort of 0-0 is happy, it's not very. It's not going to get
enough.
anyone. Really, it's not enough, as you said, not enough to get there. So yeah, I don't think we can read too much into it. As you say, I think there's just going to be.
I don't think we can be too critical. I mean, it's a bit of a maybe like a perfect storm with Cambridge coming out so strong, getting that first win, and Wigan, a team who are struggling to score goals, like we mentioned, on a consistent basis. It becomes one of those, if they concede early on, like they did in this one, perhaps they're not used to it. They've not conceded since August in the league, as I mentioned. So yeah, a bit of a reset, and yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, Sean Maloney, very good manager, and done a really good job with, what you would call a shoestring budget there, with the troubles they've had over recent seasons. Yeah, all things considered, yeah, not too much to worry about on a Wigan point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. But great to see Cambridge manage to secure their first victory of the season. We're going to move on to our clubs now, Barnsley and Lincoln, respectively. We'll start with the victorious out of us pair, and that was me. That was me with Barnsley. Never easy being a Barnsley fan. Not last minute winner from Mark Roberts, third goal of the season for the defender. This one sort of came off his shoulder. From a corner in added time to give Barnsley 3 points. Before that, Davis Keeler opened the scoring. Very, very similar goal to the one he scored on debut at home to Bristol Rovers. Sort of received the ball off the left-hand channel and then cut inside, curling shot with his right foot into the bottom corner of the Blackpool goal this time round. So good finish to open the scoring of the game. But Blackpool equalised, pretty sloppy defending really for Barnsley, and were able to attack using set pieces. And interesting, Jimmy. Barnsley, 2 goals, 2 shots on target, 3 points, magic.
Yeah, that was something I had on my notes. It looked a pretty even game. Obviously, you're better to attest to that because you actually watched the game. But yeah, 2 shots on target and 2 goals. I do want to mention the away form, but before I do that, it is worth mentioning for Steve Bruce, obviously the Blackpool manager. He wasn't there. The death of his really young grandson, the son of Alex Bruce, who's the Salford assistant, used to be a manager at Macclesfield when I first came across him. But yeah, I mean, it's just worth mentioning for those two. Obviously, a really horrible moment and thing to happen for their family as a whole, and sort of thoughts go out to them. With football, you sort of realise it's not as important when you get stuff like that happening, and it's nice to see that they've been able to take the time off, and Steve Bruce sort of taking away for the game. I don't know if he's going to be there on Tuesday, but not being there on Saturday, be with his family, and Alex as well, is worth mentioning, I think. But to get back to the game, I was in terms of the away form there. Barnsley second in the table. If you're just counting away games, they're only behind Birmingham on goal difference. The home form, though, they're 19th, and that's where you look for the room for improvement. But away form, they're doing really well, and it's another good win on the road for Barnsley, and that is how I'd sort of sum it up. Really, do you see it as an even game? Obviously, you watched it. Is that how you class it?
Yeah. To be fair, no side really sort of stood out. Both sides had spells where they passed the ball well and played it well. Good attacking phase. There's no sort of neither side really stood out in terms of being the ones that were most likely to go on and win it. I think a draw would have been a fair result in fairness, but not complaining about the 3 points. But a draw would have been fair. Not the best in the world, but both sides did have chances, but no one really stood out. So pretty even game, as you mentioned, and it's one of those. It's just sort of on that point you mentioned earlier. Actually, Blackpool had been in fine form, really, particularly at home. Obviously, ever
since Steve Bruce comes in, he's been superb.
They've been superb. I think they dipped it in their last result, but before that, they had 4 wins on. So some really good stuff for Blackpool. I just worry about their strength and depth coming into this busy winter period. In terms of the players coming off the bench, are they the quality of what Blackpool need to come off and make that difference? Perhaps when things aren't going for them, perhaps when the tide isn't in their direction. They need impact players that can come off the bench. I mean, if we take the game at Saturday, off the bench, they brought Josh Onama. who they brought in over the Steve Bruce brought in actually. I think he's worked with Bruce before. Josh Onomer, who has not played many appearances, and then we've got Jordan Rhodes and Ashley Fletcher in terms of the attacking options that came off the bench. None of those really stand out as impact players, if that makes sense. None of them have really got that record that, as soon as they've got on the pitch, you're going to score or they're going to make some sort of impact. Fletcher has struggled in the past couple of clubs. He's gone to Jordan Rhodes. Was that really good when he first joined Blackpool on loan from Huddersfield, but since signing permanently has sort of not shown the qualities that we know he's capable of. And Josh Onomer, I imagine he's sort of getting to grips with the fitness levels of the league. Really, I'm not too sure what his situation was. I think he has been either out of football.
Yeah, I mean he's been out of the game for a while. He was a free agent for over a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to cause argument here, but I'm going to disagree slightly with you. I think you've been a little bit harsh on terms of Blackpool's depth. I think Rhodes is better than you're giving him credit for. Obviously, last season, absolutely superb. 15 goals, was it, in 30-something games? Fletcher, I'll concede that point in terms of him. Onomer, I'm a fan of Onomer. It's nice to get him back into football. I mean, you're someone who's been out of the game for a while. It is nice to see them land somewhere. And hopefully you can sort of pick up a little bit. And Pennington, obviously a defender rather than the attackers you were focusing on, isn't a bad option from the bench and was quite an important part of that team last season. But I understand what you mean in terms of the fact that they've not got heaps of attackers to bring on. But I think you could put Barnsley in that boat as well, to be honest. And it's not. It's an embarrassment of riches at some clubs in the league. Like, I mean, you look no further than Birmingham. They've got 3 strikers, Bolton as well. They've got strikers who could start for any team in the division and probably some in the division above. But yeah, I don't think it is as bad as you're painting it. But we will see a couple of injuries, and it turns on its head.
Yeah. I take that. I just fear, particularly when it gets to the winter month where squad depth is key. As you mentioned there, all it takes is a couple of injuries, and then Blackpool, I think, will look pretty deflated in terms of their squad, and that could impact. It might not, but it could impact sort of if they do end up going on a bit of a playoff push. But to me, the options off the bench just aren't good enough. The options starting really, Ballard and Joseph up front as well are not the strongest options. Is probably the politest way of putting it, in my opinion. That is, they're not the type of players Blackpool need. They need a goal scorer, and they just don't have that 20-goal a season striker that you can rely on that will get you some sort of moments of quality in the game. I can see where you come from. But
Swaying slowly.
Don't have to agree on everything, which is why we're here, which is really good. But
exactly that.
I think Blackpool can't look into it too much. In terms, as we said, they've been on a good run prior to that game. The game before the Barnsley they lost against Mansfield, but Mansfield themselves are on a great run, so we can't really begrudge them of a defeat to Nigel Clough's side, because they've started the season off on a bit of a rocket. Really good start for them. Now to your side of the league.
Well, you say my side. I think anyone that listens to this knows I'm a Doncaster Rovers fan. But yeah, I cover Lincoln is how I describe it.
You cover Lincoln, yeah.
But yeah, I won't last too long. Obviously, I'm conscious there's a lot to talk about this week in terms of the games in midweek as well. But a game of small margins is how I would describe it. Took an early lead. Kadamati on loan from Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, you'd know Seb. 33 seconds into the game, he scored his first goal at home.
Not a bad start that at all, is it?
Definitely that. And they've took the lead there, pulled one back with Anderson. Williamson got another, and at 2-1, Rico Hackett, who came on a few minutes beforehand, I believe, missed a penalty. He's been out of action for a while, sort of working his way back into the squad. Went off on international duty with St. Lucia, sort of just about getting back into fitness. I wouldn't have given the penalty personally. I think you're throwing someone in at the deep end there, and we came back to bite them in the arse a little bit. He missed that. would have made it 2-2, completely different game. And then Anderson got another to make it 3-1, which is how it finished. Lincoln slipped to 8th, which looks awful on paper in terms of where they were at kickoff at least, but 8th still a good place for them to be. But they're only 2 points behind 3rd, which is Wycombe, as we mentioned earlier on. So it's really tight up the top end of the table. And the one sort of comment I wanted to pick out, Mark Hone, who used to play for Lincoln, who's the BBC Radio Lincolnshire, one of their summarisers, he said it's probably one of the best teams he's ever seen at League One level at Birmingham. I mean, he's been watching football for a long time. So it is sort of consolidation to that argument we've been saying in terms of just how heads and shoulders above everyone else, not just in spending power, but in terms of that squad and the quality they've got and the depth. And I mean, Jay Stansfield was out injured for this one, and there was I think it was on Facebook actually. I'll move across from saying Twitter, and someone said, we've only got to worry about Alfie May and Lyndon Dykes now then. Which tell you all you need to know. Which that tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? One of those is enough. So yeah, they're doing really well. Obviously, Birmingham deservedly top of the league and deservedly got their win in this one. But yeah, probably was closer than it looks, at least in the scoreline.
Yeah, you mentioned the small margins. Rico Hackett, obviously coming back from injury a long time out. Last season was pretty influential in that side that sort of went on. How many games unbeaten run was it? 20 odd games.
16, yeah.
Almost 20, 16, and to come back and to miss a penalty 2-1 down, where actually that goal makes it 2-2, and a point against Birmingham is not a bad result at all. It's a
good result, yeah.
It's a great result, yeah. And then obviously
he came on in the 70th minute and then missed the penalty in the 72nd minute. So he's only been on the pitch 2 minutes. You're sort of bringing him on cold. I wasn't too sure about that. Yeah. They've got players on the pitch who I think probably could have taken it. Even though Ben House, who would be the other automatic taker, was taken off. So that would be my only critique. But small margins, as I've said a couple of times, and in terms of it's still not been a bad result for a team like Lincoln to almost nick a point against Birmingham. And I think that could be a bit of a story of the season. Teams getting really close and not getting over the line in the end against Birmingham. But yeah, that would be my only sort of fault to pick in terms of giving Rico Hackett the penalty. But if it goes in, you don't have this conversation and you say it was a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
It was saved, is worth mentioning, rather than dragging it wide. But yeah, it wasn't the best penalty.
Yeah, football works in strange ways sometimes, doesn't it, as you said. In terms of the results elsewhere, Reading beat Crawley in the early kickoff. Bolton Wanderers beat Burton Albion, who we covered earlier. They are now at the foot of the table. Steve Evans' Rotherham United lost to Wrexham at home. That was an early goal courtesy of Paul Mullin. Charlton Athletic drew with Stockport. Huddersfield beat Bristol Rovers 3-1. Stevenage 1-0 victorious against Mansfield. Northampton beat Leyton Orient, I beg your pardon, 1-0. And finally, Thursday, which we discussed last week, I don't know why it was a Thursday.
But strange day, isn't it?
Yes, very strange day. Shrewsbury lost 2-0 to Exeter, who themselves are on a fine run of form, and I'm sure we will come to them after the break. So we will be back very shortly to cover the preview, the midweek actions of League One taking place on Tuesday. And we'll see you to talk all the things about the Tuesday games after this. Hello and welcome back to the League One Lowdown review episode. Although this is the preview part, which is a little bit confusing. Myself, Seb Jones.
We're coming for Callum and Sam's job on the Thursday.
Indeed, we are. Yeah, myself, Seb Jones, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson. We're on now. Yeah, as we mentioned, we've got a whole whole schedule of fixtures for League One taking place on Tuesday. So we're just going to sort of preview some of the ones that have taken our eye ahead of the matches. So we'll start with probably two big guns of the league, Wrexham and Huddersfield. Both were victorious on Saturday. Both have been in good form. Particularly Huddersfield, there's a little bit of a dip, a little bit of pressure on Michael Duff, but they seem to have come out of that patch. Second versus sixth. Where's your money going, Jamie?
Oof. I think it's got to go to Wrexham, hasn't it? I mean, their home form has been quite remarkable. We talked about Barnsley's away form, but Wrexham's home form, unbeaten in 12 at the old racecourse ground. I mean, they've been quite sort of spectacular at home. Got a good win, obviously, on the weekend, and both teams meaningful victories. Obviously, Wrexham winning at Rotherham, probably a more headline-grabbing result than Huddersfield, a more run-of-the-mill victory against Bristol Rovers. But two meaningful victories, and they've won their last 3 games each, showing how evenly matched they are. And to further that, they've both scored 5 in their last 5 games. They've both scored 8 goals. So really evenly matched going into it. Second versus sixth, as you said, and if obviously they're all available on sort of the Sky Plus sort of system on Tuesday night. I mean, if I wasn't watching the Doncaster game, this is probably the one I'd be watching because it could go either way. It's sort of a bit of a toss of a coin, but it should be a really good game. Two sides at the right end of the table, pushing themselves, and are both on decent runs of form. All the hallmarks of a great game. So I'm sure it'll finish 0-0 now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've just stolen the words out of my mouth there. Huddersfield currently in 18 points, so that means that they are 6th place in the table, obviously occupying the last playoff place. I covered earlier a little bit about the pressure that Michael Duff was under, but they have seemed to come out of that. Within that, they had the Yorkshire Derby victory over Barnsley. They had the result at the weekend. The victory at home to Bristol Rovers. They're after it. They're out there in terms of the pressure.
They've turned the corner.
Spotlight on the club. There was sort of a lot of eyes were on the club, because of the summer that they had, because of little sort of the rebuild and the reset they have. The eyes have sort of come off them in a good way.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, the way I would describe it, they've turned a corner a little bit. They had that really good start to the season, fell off for a few games, but there was no sort of panic stations, I don't think. And they've proved their quality these last few games. They've sort of picked themselves back up, which is never an easy thing to do when you get yourself in a little bit of a rut, but they're looking strong. But it is a real test. I mean, for both teams. It's a different game entirely. But it's at the John Smiths. I'm not quite sure if it's called the John Smiths anymore, but it was at Huddersfield. But with Wrexham, with that home form I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. But either way, it's a really exciting game. And it could go either way. But Michael Duff, credit to him and the team and Huddersfield in terms of being able to turn that corner, and they're looking in the right direction again.
I mentioned it's two of the big clubs. In terms of Wrexham, they've lost 2 games so far this season. One of which I think was a surprise defeat against Stevenage, Alex Ravel-Stevens' side, and the second one was against Birmingham, who, as we know, are also one of the big clubs in the league and spent quite a lot in the summer. Do you think Huddersfield stand a chance against Wrexham, given this? Could they get inspiration at Huddersfield based on what Birmingham did when they beat Wrexham, or do you think there's no chance there?
I think it's more than it's nowhere near no chance. I think, as I said, in terms of it being so evenly matched, there's no reason why either team can't win. Huddersfield doing so well, and my only caveat is the home form that I've mentioned in terms of how good Wrexham are at home, especially. But yeah, Huddersfield are a really good team. They can beat anyone on the day, and there's no reason why they can't beat Wrexham. Absolutely no reason at all.
That's fair enough. Yeah, Fez. So that is taking place on Tuesday night. Certainly a big one. I mentioned earlier, 2nd versus 6th. Certainly one to keep your eye out. The second game we're gonna preview, sort of look ahead at, is a team in a surprising run of good form, and that is Exeter City. We mentioned about their Thursday night win at Shrewsbury. They have Reading at home. What do you reckon? Obviously, Shrewsbury, the game was away. This time they're at home. Can they continue their good run of form? What do you reckon, Jamie?
Yeah, they're in really good form, aren't they? 5th in the table, 6 games unbeaten, only 1 less in their last 9. the other thing to mention to that, they've got in their last 5 league games 5 clean sheets. Joe Whitworth has been quite incredible, bit of a Superman at the minute, in really remarkable form, doing really well there. So yeah, again, no reason why they can't carry it on. But on the flip side of it, takes 2 to tango and all that. But Reading themselves are doing okay. A big win for them at the weekend, 4-1 against Crawley. They've been a little bit more inconsistent, but at home, that's where they're strongest. So it's obviously plays into Exeter's hands a little bit. They're the team high up the table. They're the team at home. They're the team in the best form. But a little bit what I was saying earlier in terms of your teams like Northampton, a Bristol Rovers, a Wigan, they can win on their day. And I'd stick Reading in that category, especially at home. You never know what they're going to do. But this one away, it's difficult for them. Exeter in such good form and their defensive solidity, they're just, it's like a brick wall, their net at the minute. And yeah, they're doing really well. So I'd expect more of the same from Exeter, who have been a bit of a surprise package for me.
Yeah, so you mentioned about Joe Whitworth. Did you see that little back heel against Shrewsbury? Have you seen that now? The ball comes to him.
No.
He's got the attacker under pressure, and it's very calmly just plays a little back heel to a fellow defender whilst under pressure from the attacker. They can certainly do. Oh yeah, and they've been playing with a back 3 mainly: Exeter, Sweeney, Cramer, and Yafiko. So that 3 is sort of certainly gives them some balance and some stability so far. Yeah, we're on a season-long loan from Palace, I think it is. Maybe I might be wrong. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he certainly impressed. Only 20 years of age, and you can certainly say for sure he's not going to be in this league next season. A couple of clean sheets so far this season already, it's the best form of attack is defence, as we've seen, and that has certainly helped Shrewsbury rank up that league table rankings. As for Reading, what have you sort of made to them? I know we didn't cover in detail their result at the weekend, but what do you reckon to their result, and can they sort of pick up a little bit more momentum, do you reckon?
Well, you should trust yourself more. You are right that he's on loan from Crystal Palace. And so just to touch on Reading, I have 2 more games to cover after this one. That they're a bit like what I mentioned. They're a bit of an up and down side, and that is to their credit. That the real sort of financial difficulties they've been under in the past couple of seasons, that to be sort of where they are, to stay in the league was an achievement in itself, and to be being able in a position to be able to push on is definitely a positive for them. But I mean, I'm more worried if my team was going to Reading. Hosting Reading, I think you can be a little bit more safe, a little bit more calm. But again, on the day, Ruben Sellers, really good manager. They've got some really good players in that team. A really young, hungry squad. They can spring a surprise. Definitely that. So yeah, they're a team I always enjoy watching, Reading, and it should be a good game, this one, away at Exeter for them.
So Exeter, as we said, in fine form, and given the home advantage, you would probably back them, but nevertheless, you certainly back an entertaining game. Next one we're going to look at in detail is Leyton Orient at home to Rotherham. Rotherham went 1-0 down at the weekend to an early Wrexham goal, so they lost 1-0 at home. They're away this time. Do you think they could fare a little bit better at midweek, Jamie?
Well, they got that duck off their back, didn't they? Or the monkey off the back, I should say. With that, I don't know. I've got 2 sort of sayings mixed up.
Monkey,
duck off duck off a water's back and monkey off the back. I've got 2 sort of mixed up. But you know what I mean.
I do get exactly what you mean. Yeah.
In terms of winning that away game, the first one in a really long time. But they've not built on that at all, which I thought they was going to do. I thought that as soon as they did get that first away win, that would propel them up at home and away in terms of just giving that belief, because that was the thing I always felt was hanging over them, a bit of like a dark cloud over the whole thing. But it's just not been the case at all. They've not improved much of anything noticeably. and it's two struggling teams, I think, in different metrics. Obviously, you expect a lot more from Rotherham. I think I put them to be second or third at the start of our season in our predictions, which are probably looking very silly as we sit now 10, 11, 12 games in, already probably looking a little bit stupid. But in terms, the different metrics, obviously we expect Leyton Orient to be mid-table probably this season after overachieving a little bit last season. And they're sort of really down towards the relegation zone. And then Rotherham, who we expect to be right up at the top, are struggling themselves, lower mid-table. It's just... It's hard. I struggle to sort of have the words to describe where Rotherham are at the minute because I just find the whole thing a bit confusing. Just to be where they are and the fact that it's not gelled together with a lot of players coming back. Obviously, Steve Evans coming back and they've built a really competent squad. They did it early as well. They did their business really early on in the summer, the bulk of it anyway. They brought a lot of experience in, but it's just not gelled.
Yeah.
Seems to be the case.
Yeah.
And they can't find any consistency. I mean, they had back-to-back wins before they went to Peterborough and squandered a first half lead. And then obviously they lost to Wrexham at home. First minute, Mullins scored and they didn't have a reply. So I think that's warning signs, bit of a concern there. I'll hand it back to you before I go on about Leyton Orient.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned in terms of breaking the
breaking the duck.
The pressure of you've made me stumble because I've had second doubts.
It's some sort of animal on a back. That is the saying I'm trying for.
Yeah. They've broken.
Someone can let me know in the comments. Somewhere.
Yeah, they've broken a long streak. They've broken their long streak of not winning away from home. They got the win at the start of the month. Very scrappy one. It was, but since then, in fairness, the only league game that they've had away from home is the Peterborough game, where, as you said, that's when they squandered a 3-1 lead and ended up drawing 3-3. So nothing really has sort of put a spark in their bellies, really, because not that much has changed. Yes, they've got this off the back in terms of waiting. I think it was almost 2 years for an away win. They've got that out of the way, but in terms of the bigger picture, not that much has changed. If that makes sense, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, what you mentioned earlier. So it will be interesting that the fact they are away from home again. Although Leyton Orient have struggled so far this season, they're only above the relegation places on goal difference. So they've got the same points as Shrewsbury, who occupy the last place. So it's not going to be easy for Rotherham, but certainly maybe not as difficult as some of the other teams that they're going to face in the division. Would you agree?
Yeah, you got to agree that you're facing a team down the bottom who are winless in 3 defeats in a row. You can't ask for a better time to play someone. And if Rotherham can't pick up a result in a game like this, then you've got to really start asking questions. And I think that's where we are. I mean, Leyton Orient, I think the table's probably a little bit unfair to them. I mean, they were at Lincoln a few weeks ago now, and I mean, I was sick as a parrot that day, but they had a real threat. I mean, nothing was really pleasing me. There was one lovely run. Jovan McCarmer sort of charged through 3 or 4. Was the only sort of moment I had a bit of life in me for the entire game. But Leyton Orient with a better team in that first half, they had a real threat. But the thing they were missing was a finishing touch. They had just been a something in the final third. And I don't think that's really changed. I think that's probably where they are. They're probably a better team than the table suggests, but they're just not finishing the dinner. They're just not putting the ball in the back of the net. And as long as that continues, you're not going to start climbing up the table.
No, you're full of quotes today, Jamie. I'm here for it. Only scored 10 goals in 11 games in the league so far this season, and have conceded 15. So it's not. They've conceded more than scored, which is never a good, position to be in for Leyton Orient. Yeah, you're right. Probably league table portrays them as worse than it is.
Yeah. In terms of how they're playing and how they're performing, but at the end of the day, the only thing that matters are goals. You can play as well as you want. If you're not scoring a goal at the end of it, don't make a difference. And I think that's just where Leyton Orient are. They should be higher than they are in terms of performances, and Richie Wellens will be the first to tell you that. But performances aren't what put points on the board.
Just a slight. This is sort of sparked us a bit. I was chatting to my friend who's a Blackpool fan. Normally, 10 games is about when sort of teams, when the league starts to start sort of shaping form, and so many teams that they're going to be reaching towards the top, and the sort of the bottom 5-6 teams start shaping a little bit. That's not quite happened yet so far in the league. So
yeah, definitely, I agree.
Even though we are a lot of teams have played 10 some sort of 11-12 games, so normally by this point, this is when you can start to really judge a team, can sort of really start to see how the season is going to fare. We yet to see sort of things settle really so far in the division. So to link it back to Orient, even though they are in 20th place, as we've said, the league table is not very settled, and it could change very quickly still. And like I said, the performance-wise, that they've been pretty good for Orient. Just results just haven't been there. And that's said for Orient, as is the case for I think a lot of the sides as well. The league table just hasn't settled this time of the year, when perhaps normally any other season it would have done. Teams sort of start to shape up a bit more. And I imagine we'll probably be around the 20 game mark where we will fully see the table sort of settle in terms of teams and how teams are going to fare. I think we've still got quite a few surprises.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Both at the top and the bottom. There's quite a few surprises already that I think, after a few more results, they will sort of get back to normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of congestion in the league still. It's really clumped together at the top and the bottom a little bit. I agree with what you said there.
I appreciate that. That was a slight side point, but I think it applies for Orient as well as quite a lot of clubs as well. So the final game we're going to look at for the midweek fixtures is Burton Albion against Wycombe Wanderers. Two teams in contrasting positions on the league table. Burton Albion rock bottom, 24th with 4 points on board. Wycombe Wanderers a third with 20 points from 10. Are we going one way, Jamie? Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to beat around the bush. Yeah, exactly that. We spoke about.
Thank you very much, everyone.
We spoke about Wycombe obviously earlier, so I mean, there's not much ground to cover there. But Burton obviously is the focus. Winless still 10 games in, and they've only got 4 points. And now Cambridge have got that win. They're the team. Suddenly, all the focus is on them, all the attention's on them, and the fact that they haven't won a game yet, because they are now the only one left in the division. All competitions, they've got 6 defeats in a row. You can't find a stat that points in the right direction. Mark Robinson, in sort of all of his time this season, all competitions, has won 1 out of 12. That in a cup competition. So it's a really dire situation is the only way to describe it. And I'll talk a little bit after I throw back to you in terms of their games coming up and what I think that might mean for Mark Robinson. But in terms of this game against Wycombe, if they can get anything out of it, it's nothing short of a miracle. I think just the way Burton have been at the minute, they just look sort of devoid of impetus, or probably the best way to describe it, they just look a real mess. And I'm not quite sure how it turns around.
It's harsh, but it's true, really. To have only 4 points on board at this stage from 10 games played, it's poor, really poor. We mentioned this with Cambridge last week, and we have done for a while.
It still stands for Cambridge. I do want to make that distinction in terms of the fact that obviously Cambridge have got that victory and the weight's off them a little bit. But I mean, the level on points with Burton in terms of the draws and a 1 win and a draw for Cambridge. So they're both under the same umbrella of being in a real poor position.
Yeah, no, I agree absolutely. I genuinely can't. I'm not just saying that. I know League One is full of surprises, and you can't predict the result, which is why we all love the EFL, why we love League One. But I genuinely cannot see Burton Albion, considering the form Wycombe Wanderers are on, and considering the form Burton Albion are on. think it's just one-way traffic here for Wycombe Wanderers. I really just can't see anything happening. And I suppose it just adds more questions to Burton Albion about their manager. Perhaps, is he in danger? Is the club going to get relegated if they don't do anything immediately? We mentioned last week about Dino coming in when he was coming in Burton.
Yeah.
He spoke about that when he did your interview. He prevented them really from dropping down into League Two. Do they need someone like him to come in and save them ultimately? Or they're still playing it safe and giving them manager a few more games. But it's a hard one really when you're in that position.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot. You bring me on to sort of the topic I was going to move on to. They've got this game obviously against Wycombe. Then they've got Cambridge. And then they're playing Scarborough Athletic in the FA Cup. Scarborough Athletic, I mean, obviously sort of bit out of our realm, but I believe it's the first time they've got to the first round of the FA Cup. I don't think that's...
Second time in their history. Last year they got to round one, but got knocked out with a replay. So it's only the second time. So they'll be hoping to go one better from last year, and then that'll be the furthest that they will have gone. But I can see where the question is coming that you're about to ask.
So to Scarborough themselves, they're not a bad team. Mid-table, National League North, on their day, of a decent side. I mean, they've got a plastic pitch up at Scarborough, always makes them a difficult place to go. But you've seen it coming. I'm sure listeners, viewers can see or hear this question coming. If he doesn't pick up a victory in those 3 games, surely he's gone.
Yeah, particularly if he loses to Scarborough. Yeah, I think that will be.
I think that if you lose to Wycombe, probably expected, but then if you lose to Cambridge, you're sort of trying to catch up already.
Yeah,
and then final nail in the coffin, you lose to a non-league side in the FA Cup. I don't see how you come back from that.
Yeah, no,
in terms of Mark Robinson,
I agree absolutely. I think that will that exact phrase. I was thinking in my head right then. That will be the straw that breaks the camel's back if they lose to Scarborough in the FA Cup. We've seen this sort of stuff happen before, where a club is struggling and they play a non-league side, and the non-league side go through. We've seen that happen before. There's no reason why it will not happen again. And it's a perfect storm really that's brewing. And then Burton will have to do something. They will have to change, especially if they lose to Cambridge.
It forces your hand a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. That gap will just widen and widen, and then the games, they're coming thick and fast in this sort of time of year. So you haven't got that much time to make up the difference that they would have should they lose to Cambridge, particularly. But also, definitely. In short answer, I think. If they lose the 3 games, I think the manager's gone.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't think there's an easy solution in terms of this is who they're going to bring in, because I don't think it's that simple. I think, you mentioned Dino, obviously, the interview we did with him a couple of weeks ago now, obviously available on wherever you're watching, listening to this. He wants a long-term project. He's happy to go into a club, and I think he has done, and sort of save them, but he wants something long-term. That was the real sort of overarching theme of the second half of the podcast. So I don't think Burton's that. And obviously going back to a club, it's always a little bit tricky. Don't go back to an ex and all that. So I don't see you. You don't see.
Jamie, you've been full of the different quotes and phrases this week.
Yeah. So audio listeners wouldn't have the treat of seeing Seb's reaction to that sort of live in colour.
I didn't expect that to appear of a podcast about League One football, but fair. Yeah,
full of surprises.
Absolutely full of but nothing less on the League One lowdown. Yeah.
So I just sort of finish off that point.
I'm not really sure what to say.
It's a little bit of a just a messy situation in terms of who they can bring in. Was just the point I was going to finish off, because there's not an obvious candidate. And Robinson, they put a lot of faith into him, brought a lot of players in the summer, a real injection of cash with the new ownership, and they've put a lot of energy and time and resource into Mark Robinson, pulling him out of the Chelsea Academy for his first EFL gig. And you got to trust that. You've got to make sure it's given time, because the last thing you want is a manager in that first sort of job getting skewered early on and it knocks his career back. Perhaps that even sort of ends a career before it's even got going in terms of EFL management. So I'm not calling for him just to go in terms of you've got to be given a chance first. But yeah, I think there's only so long you can carry on. And if they do lose, like we both said there, these next three, including that game against Scarborough in the FA Cup, then that is the writing's on the wall, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And then Burton will certainly be in trouble, that's for sure. Any more quotes you want to drop in before we finish?
I'll try and think on as you go through the other games on Tuesday.
That's fair enough. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we mentioned the sort of the main four there in a little bit more detail in terms of the other games happening. Barnsley hosting Charlton at Oakwell, Birmingham welcoming Bolton Wanderers, Shrewsbury travel to Bristol Rovers, Lincoln versus Crawley, Peterborough at home versus Blackpool, Cambridge travel to Stevenage, Northampton travel to Exeter Park to play Stockport, and finally Wigan Athletic are at home to welcome Mansfield. Before we finish and before we hear Jamie's final quote, just a reminder to give us a 5-star if you're listening to this on the any audio podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcast, or however else you are listening to this. If you are watching this on YouTube, then lucky for you, you can see our beautiful faces. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Sam and Callum will be back later on this week. They are also doing like a double episode, so they'll be reviewing the midweek games that take place on Tuesday, and also previewing the full schedule of League One games taking place at the weekend as well. Jamie, your final parting message.
Well, I've tried hard to figure up as best I can come up with a bit like these game weeks and these podcasts this week. They're like London buses. They come at 2 one after another. These games this week are really action packed. Week and action packed on the podcast stream. Obviously, us today, and then you'll have Sam and Callum to finish the week off. Before we'll be back again to do it all again next week. There's no rest for the wicked. So.
No, certainly. Oh, nice ending indeed. Brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. So that's it for myself and Jamie. We'll see you next week, but stay tuned for Sam and Callum's episode later on this week. But until then, we'll see you soon.